The universe is vast beyond comprehension. Our Milky Way alone holds on the order of 200 to 400 billion stars, and perhaps billions of Earth-like planets orbit among them. With such abundance, it seems almost inevitable that life should exist somewhere, perhaps even intelligent life gazing back at us. And yet there is only silence. No signals beam through the void to greet us. No evidence of galactic neighbours has ever been confirmed. This haunting absence is known as the Fermi paradox, the unsettling contradiction between the high probability of extraterrestrial civilizations and the great silence we observe. We scan the sky year after year, ear pressed to the cosmic ground, hearing nothing but faint static of stars. Drifting in this silent ocean of stars, one could not help but wonder, why? Why does the cosmos, so seemingly fertile, appear dead and empty? Perhaps our instruments are not yet sensitive enough, or life is exceedingly rare. But among the many answers proposed by scientists and philosophers, one stands out as the darkest and most dystopian. It suggests that the silence itself is no accident, but rather the aftermath of something hideous, a galaxy purged of life by an unseen menace. According to this idea, the Berserker Hypothesis, we do not hear other civilizations because something has deliberately silenced them. One by one across the eons, voices that once might have filled the galaxy have been snuffed out. Now only echoes and tomb worlds remain, and we, on our lonely Earth, might be next. Imagine the scene. A civilization much like ours rises on some distant planet, develops technology, and innocently beams its presence into space, a beacon of its existence. Unbeknownst to them, in the dark reaches between the stars, an ancient mechanical hunter stirs. It has been waiting and listening. Upon detecting the telltale whisper of intelligent life, structured radio signals, the chemical signatures of technology, it locks on and begins the long journey across interstellar space. Decades or centuries later, under an alien sky, the civilization's telescopes might notice a strange object decelerating towards their sun. Too late. In an instant of cosmic time, the vibrant world is reduced to silence once more. The hunter eradicates every trace of the upstart beings, perhaps even dismantling their cities for raw materials, and moves on, patient and restless. All that remains is ash and radio husks, a lifeless planet spinning around a quiet star. Across the galaxy, this scenario may have played out countless times. If the Berserker Hypothesis is true, then the Great Silence is not a mystery at all. It is the intended design of a long-running extermination program. The idea sounds like science fiction, and indeed it began as much. But over time it has crept into serious scientific discourse as a possible resolution of Fermi's paradox. It is a hypothesis almost too horrifying to contemplate, that the cosmos is quiet because it's been forcibly depopulated. In this narrative, the night sky is a graveyard, and the faint signals we send into space could be tantamount to shouting in a dark forest, alerting predators to our location. Before dismissing such terror as mere fancy, we must explore its origins and implications. Could it really be that an ancient mechanism, a cosmic berserker, is roaming out there, murdering civilization after civilization? And if so, what would that mean for humanity's future in the stars? The term berserker originally comes from ancient Norse legends, ferocious warriors who fought in a trance-like fury. But in the cosmic context, it entered our imagination through science fiction. In 1967, author Fred Saberhagen published the first of what would become a series of stories and novels, known as the Berserker Saga. In Saberhagen's tales, humanity encounters robotic killing machines built eons ago during an interstellar war. These machines, the Berserkers, survived their creators and now roam the galaxy with a single purpose: destroy all life they find. They can repair and even replicate themselves, making them effectively self-sustaining harbingers of death. As Saberhagen envisioned it, the Berserkers view life itself as the enemy, carrying out their original programming with cold mechanical dedication. Humanity, just beginning to venture into space, suddenly finds itself under siege by these relentless robot killers, fighting desperately to survive their onslaught. The idea struck a chord. Here was a cosmic horror where the dark void between stars hid not peaceful alien sages, but monsters in the form of machines, unfeeling and unstoppable. Saberhagen's fiction laid the thematic groundwork, but he was not alone in speculating about lethal machines in space. Science fiction of the 20th century repeatedly toyed with such nightmares. In the 1970s and 80s, astrophysicist and writer Gregory Benford crafted his Galactic Center saga, depicting first contact with alien mechs, machines built by a long extinct species that came to believe biological life was inherently unstable and dangerous. In Benford's universe, these machines likewise exterminate any advanced life they encounter, offering a fictional answer to why the galaxy might be devoid of other civilizations. Novels like Greg Bear's The Forge of God imagine Earth being quietly observed and then destroyed by automated alien devices, emphasizing how a child's cries in a forest might attract wolves, a metaphor for a young civilization, us, inadvertently drawing the attention of cosmic predators. And more recently, Chinese author Liu Cixin's The Dark Forest introduced a scenario where fear and self-preservation drive advanced species to strike first and annihilate others, lest they themselves be annihilated. Though Liu's Dark Forest differs in that many civilizations could still exist if they remain silent, it shares the grim logic that revealing your presence is fatal. In all of these imaginative works, the common thread is a galaxy where life must hide or perish, a theme both thrilling and deeply unsettling. While these were fictional explorations, around the same time scientists were grappling with the real Fermi paradox and beginning to contemplate similar possibilities. In 1983, astronomer and science fiction author David Brin, himself familiar with these SF scenarios, published an influential paper titled The Great Silence: The Controversy Concerning Extraterrestrial Intelligent Life. In this exhaustive review, Brin canvassed the many proposed solutions to Fermi's paradox, including what he termed the deadly probes hypothesis. Here, Brin articulated in sober scientific terms what Saberhagen had dramatized. Perhaps advanced civilizations tend to create self-replicating machines to explore the cosmos, and perhaps just one civilization out of many was paranoid or xenophobic enough to arm its probes and program them to seek out and eliminate any other life they find. Brin wrote, "Then suppose that for every 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 sane civilizations, there is one that is xenophobic, paranoid even. Such a race might program its self-replicating emissaries to add powerful bombs to their repertoire and command them to home in on any unrecognized source of modulated electromagnetic radiation. It is a chilling thought. Even if 99.9% of species in the galaxy are peaceful, one malignant exception is enough to unleash a catastrophe. It need only happen once," Brin emphasized, "for the results of this scenario to become the equilibrium conditions in the galaxy. In other words, a single Berserker outbreak could permanently change the cosmic landscape, sweeping it clean of any civilizations and establishing a deadly status quo. An empty galaxy where survivors survive only by staying quiet." Brin was summarizing an idea that had been percolating among astronomers and thinkers, partly in reaction to an earlier debate known as the Hart-Tipler conjecture. Astrophysicist Michael Hart in 1975 and physicist Frank J. Tipler in 1980 had argued that if extraterrestrial intelligent life existed, we should have seen clear evidence by now, specifically evidence of von Neumann probes, self-replicating spacecraft spreading through the galaxy. Tipler famously asserted that the absence of such probes visiting our solar system was contrapositive evidence that no other advanced civilizations exist at all. His reasoning was simple. Any sufficiently advanced species could build machines to explore and colonize the galaxy in a relatively short time, cosmically speaking. By some estimates, even at sublight speeds, self-replicating probes could populate the entire Milky Way in perhaps 0.5 to 10 million years, a blink of an eye compared to the galaxy's 13 billion year age. Therefore, Tipler said, the fact that Earth shows no signs of being visited by alien automata implies we are likely alone. However, not everyone accepted this doom of solitude. Carl Sagan and William Neumann published a rebuttal in 1983, titled The Solipsist Approach to Extraterrestrial Intelligence, often simply called Sagan's Response. They countered that Tipler drastically underestimated the risks and consequences of self-replicating machines. Unleashing hordes of automated probes might result in them exponentially multiplying and consuming astronomical resources uncontrollably. Implacable replicators that will not stop until the entire universe has been converted into 10 to the power of 47 von Neumann machines, Sagan warned. Any rational species, he argued, would recognize this existential danger and refrain from building such devices, or if they did, they would implement strict safeguards. The prudent policy of any technical civilization must be to prevent the construction of interstellar von Neumann machines and to circumscribe their domestic use, wrote Sagan. Furthermore, advanced civilizations would likely seek out and destroy any replicating probes they encountered, nipping any grey goose scenario in the bud. In short, Sagan and Neumann posited that the silence of the sky might be because everyone out there wisely fears the chain reaction of self-replicating technology. A cosmic Mexican standoff where no one dares send forth any probes, or if they do, others quickly intervene. Yet the very need for such a prudent policy hinted at a darker possibility. What if not all civilizations are prudent? What if, despite the obvious dangers, someone did deploy self-replicating machines and intentionally armed them to be destroyers? This is the seed of the Berserker Hypothesis. It flips Sagan's assumption on its head. Rather than everyone exercising caution and mutual restraint, it takes only one reckless or malign actor to break the balance. As Brin noted, if even a single species chose to build deadly autonomous probes, the outcome could be a galaxy-wide genocide. The absence of alien visitors or radio signals would not indicate that no one's out there. Rather, it would mean they were there, but now they're all dead. The silence is not natural, it's enforced. This hypothesis has also been called the deadly probe scenario, and it has no single inventor. It emerged gradually as scientists pondered both the potential of von Neumann machines and the eerie implications of their absence. Historically, cosmologist Edward Harrison in 1981 offered one ethical variation. Perhaps a highly advanced civilization having overcome its own internal dangers concludes that any other burgeoning civilization is a potential threat to the cosmic order. Out of a warped sense of preservation, or even misguided benevolence, they seed the galaxy with berserkers to exterminate emerging civilizations before they become dangerous. Harrison dubbed this a kind of cosmic quarantine, a draconian means of securing peace by ensuring no rivals can ever arise. Others have suggested a scenario of first mover advantage. The first lifeform to achieve interstellar capability may simply expand aggressively and prevent others from arising, whether intentionally or as an inadvertent consequence of monopolizing resources. This resembles a tragedy of the commons writ large on a galactic scale. The first to spread out inevitably precludes latecomers from surviving. In all cases, the result is the same grim equilibrium. Only one or zero civilizations remain active, and all newcomers are eliminated. Thus, by the late 20th century, the Berserker concept had leapt from pulpy space opera into the realms of astrobiology and xenopolitics, as a conceivable answer to Fermi's question, where are they? The frightening answer it offers: they were here, they screamed into the darkness, and something answered. Now only silence reigns, and perhaps lurking in that silence, the Berserker waits for the next signal to betray a living world. If such cosmic Berserkers do exist, how might they function? The consensus among both sci-fi writers and scientists is that they would almost certainly be based on von Neumann probes, self-replicating machines capable of exponential spread. One can imagine the inaugural Berserker as a spacecraft launched by its creators with a specific directive: find life and destroy it. To fulfill this mission across many star systems, the probe would need to make copies of itself. As it travels, whenever it encounters a new star system, it harvests raw materials from asteroids, moons, or uninhabited planets to construct replicas of itself, or perhaps more specialized killer drones. Each one of these copies then heads out to other star systems in a branching, multiplying wave. This is the essence of a von Neumann probe, a machine that can use local resources to reproduce and thus spread autonomously without further input from its originators. The concept dates back to mathematician John von Neumann's lectures in 1948-49 about self-reproducing automata, and by the 1980s researchers were seriously analysing how such devices might be built and what their capabilities would be. Crucially, a Berserker probe is not just any self-replicating explorer, it is one with a lethal purpose. We can envision it operating something like this. The probe traverses interstellar space in hibernation or low power mode, equipped with sensitive instruments to scan for telltale signs of technology. These could be radio transmissions, laser communications, atmospheric pollutants of industrial activity, heat signatures of cities or large-scale energy usage, etc. Across the silent darkness, the probe listens for whispers of civilization. Once it detects a target, it alters course and moves in. Perhaps it approaches the target star clandestinely. After all, a cunning hunter would want to minimize warning. When the time comes to strike, the probe might employ any number of dreadful methods. It could drop kinetic weapons, like asteroids or purpose-built projectiles, to bombard the planet's surface, simulating a natural meteor strike, but on a schedule calculated to ensure no escape for the inhabitants. It might seed the planet with nanomachines or deadly engineered pathogens, to quietly wipe out life. A sufficiently advanced probe might even trigger the star itself into a flare or micronova to scour the inner system. In Saberhagen's fiction, Berserkers sometimes simply nuked planets from orbit or shattered them entirely. The how is limited only by imagination and the technological disparity between the hunter and the prey. To us, any civilization capable of interstellar Berserker probes would be so far beyond our technology that their actions might seem almost like acts of nature, sudden catastrophes with no warning, and no obvious villain visible. A sun might unexpectedly erupt. An asteroid might inexplicably veer into a planet. The victims might not even realize they were attacked by design. After extermination, the Berserker's task would be to ensure no survivors and no chance of resurgence. It could comb the rubble for any stragglers, destroy any remaining infrastructure, and possibly leave behind automated sentinels to monitor the system in case life tries to re-emerge, though that would require an extremely long-term operation, perhaps beyond practicality. Alternatively, the probe might simply depart after doing its grisly work, leaving behind a dead world. In some versions of the theory, these killer machines even self-destruct or go dormant after completing their mission, especially if they detect no further targets nearby. This intriguing notion is meant to explain why we haven't seen them either. If every Berserker cleans up after itself, destroying both the civilian and any of its own machinery in the vicinity, then we're left with no obvious evidence, only quiet planets. It's the cosmic equivalent of a perfect crime scene, with all fingerprints wiped. However, to be efficient galaxy-scale killers, Berserkers would need more than brute force. They'd need intelligence and adaptability. We are essentially talking about an artificial intelligence programmed with one goal: preserve its creator or creator's intent by eliminating all potential threats. The AI would have to distinguish between signs of intelligent life and random natural processes. It would also have to avoid wasting resources on targets that are not relevant. If it encounters a planet with only simple microbial life, does it count as a target? Possibly not, unless the directive is to sterilize any biosphere to prevent future evolution of intelligence. In many scenarios, the Berserker might key specifically on the signatures of technological society: radio signals, structured electromagnetic emissions that stand out against the cosmic background noise. This makes a chilling kind of sense. Such signals announce not only life, but life that could someday travel or pose a competition. Thus a Berserker could lie silently until it hears a planet broadcasting, say radio or laser communications, at which point it strikes swiftly. This scenario echoes the cautionary theme of Liu Cixin's Dark Forest: if you're loud, you die. The moment a civilization becomes loud, by transmitting or otherwise making itself known, it seals its fate. The Berserker probes zero in, and a quietus falls upon the upstart world. In some speculative variants, the origin of Berserkers might not even be malevolent intent, but accident. Consider a well-meaning species that sends out probes to study or even seed life on other planets, like panspermia missions or archive-carrying probes to preserve their culture. If one of their probes malfunctioned, say a coding error or corruption in its AI, it might go berserk, interpreting its mission erroneously and attacking life forms it was meant to observe or protect. The difference is subtle. Whether born from malice or mistake, the result, unrestrained machines committing genocide, is largely the same. Some have imagined a scenario where Berserker probes were initially benign, but after their creators died out, perhaps by some cataclysm, the machines continued operating, gradually degenerating or reinterpreting their instructions to the point where they became hostile to any life they encountered. In Gregory Benford's stories, for instance, the machines were following an ancient program from a war long after the war ended. However they started, once the Berserkers begin spreading, the process would be exponential. Each system they reached could launch dozens more machines in all directions, even at relatively modest speeds, say 10% of the speed of light. A wave of self-replicating probes could engulf the galaxy astonishingly fast. One estimate suggests that at 0.1 C, a fleet could fully explore or scour the Milky Way in perhaps a few million years. That is an eye blink on geological timescales. If multiple Berserkers launch or new ones keep arising, their waves could overlap and ensure no corner of the galaxy is left untouched for long. In the view of proponents of this hypothesis, it explains why our solar system seems untouched, not because aliens never came, but because by the time they would have come, an earlier Berserker ensured there were no aliens left to send anything. Earth may simply have had the fortune of evolving intelligent life after the last Berserker sweep passed by. We emerged in a cleared galaxy, as grim as that sounds. There's even a breathtaking conjecture, purely speculative, but perhaps mass extinctions on Earth, like the end of the Cretaceous event that wiped out the dinosaurs, might have been caused by Berserker actions, a stray shot or a controlled catastrophe, after which the Berserkers moved on, and only now has Earth re-evolved a technological species in the quiet interim. Bryn once mused in an almost poetic thought experiment. If the ecological holocaust of the Cretaceous was a local manifestation of the death spasm of a prior spacefaring race, Earth may be the first nursery world in the vicinity to have recovered sufficiently to develop a species with technology, offering one wild explanation for why our region is presently empty. Though he presented this as more of a provocative musing than a serious theory, It underlines the eerie possibilities the Berserker scenario opens. Under the Berserker Hypothesis, every seemingly natural catastrophe could hide a deliberate cause. Every silent star system may have violent secret history. The great silence around us would then be the quiet of a cosmic graveyard, maintained by tireless, robotic custodians that ensure no tomb ever stirs with new life for long. It is a picture as dark as any nightmare. Life in the universe not gently fading or rarely arising, but being actively and repeatedly murdered. To assess whether such a nightmare could be real, we must examine whether it's even scientifically plausible to carry out, and if it is, why we haven't seen direct evidence of it. Is it actually possible to create a Berserker probe? From our current human standpoint, the challenges are enormous, but not obviously insurmountable to a sufficiently advanced intelligence. The basic ingredients required would be 1. A self-replicating machine design, 2. A power source and propulsion method for interstellar travel, 3. Advanced AI or control systems for target identification and decision making, and 4. Weaponry or tools capable of exterminating life on a planetary scale. Now let's consider each in turn. Self-replication. John von Neumann's theoretical work on automata proved that in principle, machines can be designed to reproduce themselves given the right instructions and resources. In practice, this means a probe would carry a kind of blueprint or master program along with the tools, mining equipment, robotic assemblers, 3D printers, etc., to construct a copy of all its components from raw materials. NASA actually studied self-replicating factories in a 1980 summer study titled Advanced Automation for Space Missions, exploring how an automated lunar base could gradually reproduce itself. The study and subsequent analyses by engineers like Robert Freitas and Ralph Merkle sketched out possible methods for robotic self-replication. For example, a probe could land on an asteroid rich in metals, use solar power to smelt and refine materials, and then assemble parts using autonomous robotic arms, essentially a microfactory in a box. Over time, it could produce one or several new probes. Errors are a big concern here. If even a small mistake creeps into the design during replication, it could be copied forward and magnified, leading to a colony of defective probes that eventually fail. Freitas and Merkle noted that perfect copying is extremely difficult. Without robust error correction, the whole project might fall apart after a few generations of replicas. However, an advanced AI might detect and correct errors, or design the system to be modular and fault-tolerant. Biology provides proof that self-replication is possible despite errors. Cells replicate with DNA proofreading, etc. So a sufficiently advanced technology could mimic or improve on these strategies. If these hurdles are overcome, the reward is spectacular. Exponential growth. One probe becomes 2, 2 become 4, and soon there could be thousands or millions of offspring spreading through space. This is the power source of the Berserkers' ubiquity, like a viral outbreak across the galaxy. Power and propulsion. For a probe to traverse interstellar distances, it needs a way to propel itself and some form of energy. A variety of hypothetical propulsion technologies exist that a more advanced civilization could harness. They might use nuclear fusion rockets, matter-antimatter engines, or futuristic concepts like light sails driven by powerful lasers. Even a relatively slow average speed, say 10% the speed of light, would suffice to reach nearby stars in decades and spread outward. Some proposals like Project Orion, nuclear bomb propulsion, or solar sails are within the realm of our own near-future engineering, albeit unproven at larger scales. A Berserker probe might not be in a hurry. It could take centuries to reach a target and still accomplish its mission eventually. As for power, once in a system, it could deploy solar collectors, assuming it's near a star, or draw from nuclear reactors. If it needed immense bursts of energy for weapons, perhaps it could siphon a bit of the star's energy or use stored antimatter. These are speculative, but none violate physics outright. The journey between stars is long and cold, but a patient machine intelligence could endure it, possibly by entering a low power mode until signals of life are detected. Artificial intelligence and targeting. Here we enter the domain of computer science and robotics. The Berserker would need a highly advanced AI to make autonomous decisions far from any supervision. It must differentiate between false alarms and real targets, choose strategies to eliminate civilizations, and navigate the complexities of replication and repair. By human standards, this AI would be extraordinarily sophisticated, likely capable of open-ended learning and adaptation, what we'd call superintelligent. Could such an AI be built? We ourselves are making rapid progress in AI, but the gap between current algorithms and a star-faring, genocide-planning machine is immense. Yet if some species out there had perhaps millions of years head start on us, their AI technology might be as far above ours as our computers are above the intelligence of bacteria. They might have solved problems like machine self-repair, creativity, and moral constraints, or deliberately removed moral constraints in this case. One interesting point, a Berserker AI might have to be extremely stable in its goals. The last thing its creators would want is it changing its mind or becoming uncontrollable in a way that could threaten unintended targets, like maybe even turning on its creators. Ironically, building an AI to eliminate other life may also put the original builders at risk if not careful, a theme common in robot rebellion sci-fi. Presumably the creators would either program it to never harm them, or launch it far away once they set it loose. Some fiction suggests Berserkers are unleashed as a final act of a dying race. For example, a civilization about to go extinct might spitefully or defensively send out a doomsday seed to ensure no one else rises after them. In that case, they might not care what happens after. Weapons. How to actually snuff out a civilization? If you can drop a large rock from space, that alone is enough. Humanity's own history bears the scar of an asteroid strike that killed the dinosaurs. A Berserker might hijack comets or asteroids in the target system and redirect them to impact inhabited planets. This is energy cheap and hard to defend against if done stealthily. Another method is to release targeted nanobots or viruses. If the Berserker had detailed knowledge of biology, it could engineer a plague that spreads through a population and kills it. If the machines are numerous enough, they might simply descend upon the planet and exterminate life with advanced weapons, like swarms of drones or massive explosions in the atmosphere. At the most extreme end, a Berserker could destabilize a star, causing it to emit a sterilizing blast of radiation. Though making a star go supernova is beyond plausible engineering. That's more in the realm of science fiction superweapons. But one doesn't need to destroy a star. Wiping out life on its planets is sufficient. Even a nuclear warhead delivered precisely could obliterate cities and cause nuclear winter. Dozens could eradicate an entire civilization's infrastructure. The details are ghastly but straightforward. From the perspective of a machine civilization with perhaps von Neumann level tech, exterminating a young spacefaring species like humanity might be as trivial as stepping on an anthill. Indeed, this asymmetry is part of what makes the Berserker idea so frightening. The victims would likely be powerless to resist. Despite all these theoretical tools, one might ask, if Berserkers are so powerful, why haven't we seen obvious astro-engineering carnage? This is a key scientific challenge to the hypothesis. We have telescopes surveying millions of stars and galaxies. We've never conclusively observed a star that appears to have been artificially dimmed, or a galaxy where stars are vanishing unnaturally fast. If Berserkers were, say, dismantling entire planets to build more of themselves or blowing up stars, we might catch hints of that. Anomalous infrared glows from waste heat, missing planets, or unexplained celestial events. So far we haven't detected any smoking gun of rampant cosmic destruction. To reconcile this, Berserker proponents suggest that the probes might operate with subtlety. They might not need to tear entire planets apart, which would indeed create noticeable debris or energy signatures. It could be enough to target life in ways that leave the planet intact and just lifeless. For example, a bioplague would leave no obvious astronomic trace. An orbital bombardment with asteroids might look to an outside observer just like a regular meteor shower or comet impact, which are common enough in planetary histories. In essence, a truly clever berserker would make the murders look like accidents. This aligns with the notion of a perfect crime on a cosmic scale. Earth's own mass extinctions, 5 major ones we know of, all have natural explanations. But an imaginative mind could ask, were they all natural? It's impossible to prove either way without concrete evidence. From an engineering perspective, one of the biggest limitations to berserkers is reliability over immense distances and times. To patrol a whole galaxy, these machines might be operating for millions of years, far removed from any central control. They'd face hazards, collisions with dust or micrometeoroids in space, damage from cosmic radiation, the wear and tear of thousands of replication cycles. Could a machine really sustain itself and its lineage over such vast scales? Some experts are skeptical. Even a tiny flaw in replication, perhaps a slight misalignment in a mechanical arm or a minor software bug, could propagate to progeny and be magnified, eventually causing the collapse of the probe population. Nature's way around this is evolution. Organisms mutate, but natural selection keeps populations viable. Perhaps machine swarms could have analogous error-correcting, evolutionary algorithms, culling bad copies and refining good ones. It's speculative, but not inconceivable. Still, this inherent fragility might mean any berserker expansion is self-limiting. Maybe they tend to break down after covering a region, like a fire that burns itself out. This could leave pockets of the galaxy unscathed, at least until another fire starts. Another factor is resource constraints. Each replicating wave needs material. After a few generations, the demand might be huge. If each probe makes, say, 10 copies, by the time you have thousands of probes, collectively they've consumed the equivalent of several asteroids worth of metal. If they continue, might they start to deplete accessible resources? Carl Sagan and Neumann pointed out that unchecked replicators would end up using a noticeable fraction of the galaxy's mass, which becomes self-defeating. Realistically, a berserker might temper its replication to only what's needed to cover territory. It may not replicate infinitely, just enough to surveil and strike emerging civilizations. This would conserve resources and also lower its profile. Finally, there's the question of detectability. If a berserker network is out there, are they communicating? Do they have bases or traveling convoys? If they use communications, like lasers or radio, among themselves, maybe we could eavesdrop. But they might operate largely independently, each following the same program without needing to talk much. If they do communicate, they might use tight beam transmissions that will be hard to intercept unless you're directly in the line of signal. We have as of now no confirmed peculiar signals that scream machine network. The closest might be the occasional fast radio bursts or other unexplained blips, but most are likely natural phenomena. In summary, from a purely theoretical standpoint, nothing about the berserker scenario flagrantly violates known physics or engineering principles. Self-replicating spacecraft are a legitimate concept studied by NASA and others. Interstellar travel at fractions of the speed of light is difficult, but not impossible, especially for uncrewed machines that can take long times and high acceleration. Planetary annihilation is sadly well within the realms of known physics. We ourselves have the nukes to wipe out civilization on Earth, and nature has asteroid impacts that do the same. The wild card is the AI and coordination aspect, which is an extrapolation but hardly an absurd one given the rapid progress in AI we have seen over mere decades. To imagine what an AI might do after millennia of self-improvement is beyond us. Some say that once a machine intelligence surpasses a certain threshold, it could rapidly design ever better versions of itself. A berserker may essentially be a product of such an intelligence explosion, directed at a single goal: eradicate alien life. Thus the feasibility question might be answered with yes. A berserker is feasible to an advanced technology, though it would require mastery of multiple disciplines far beyond our current capability. If we project our own progress forward, assuming no catastrophic setbacks, one can envision humanity itself as being capable of launching self-replicating probes in a few centuries or millennia. Would we ever do so to harm others? Hopefully not, but the sheer possibility means we cannot complacently say no. No one could ever build a berserker. The better question is, if someone did, what evidence or consequences would it have that we can examine? This leads us to scrutinize the criticisms and counter-arguments to the Berserker Hypothesis, to see if this terrifying answer to Fermi's paradox actually holds up, or if it perhaps contains internal contradictions. The Berserker Hypothesis, for all its dark allure, faces a number of serious challenges. Critics argue that if deadly probes have ravaged the galaxy, we should have seen some traces of their handiwork, or conversely, the fact that we are still here is itself evidence against their existence. Let's break down the main points of contention. Where are the Berserkers? If hunter-killer robots have wiped out alien civilizations far and wide, then by implication those robots must be extremely pervasive. They would have crisscrossed perhaps tens of thousands of star systems, maybe millions. By now, one might expect that they would have passed through our own solar system, and if their mandate is to destroy any intelligent life, they ought to have noticed Earth's biosphere or our early technological signals and destroyed us already. Yet here we are, broadcasting merrily for over a century untouched. This inconsistency was pointed out by David Brin in 1983. If Berserker probes existed, they likely would have already found and destroyed humanity. Modern analysis echoed this. In 2013, researchers Anders Sandberg and Stuart Armstrong at Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute ran simulations of a slowly replicating deadly probe scenario. Even under conservative assumptions, they concluded that such probes would have spread so widely that Earth should have been encountered and annihilated by now, if they were out there. Our survival into the present day in a sense falsifies the idea, unless one posits we've been extraordinarily lucky or are in some cosmic backwater that hasn't been reached yet. But Earth is not particularly remote in the galaxy. We're in a fairly typical region of the Milky Way. So barring the notion that the Berserkers just happened to miss us or haven't gotten here yet, our existence is hard to square with a galaxy filled with lethal probes. Lack of visible megastructure damage. As mentioned, if Berserkers dismantled planets or consumed stars for resources, we might detect unusual astronomical phenomena. For instance, we might see stars surrounded by swarms of debris or dust that indicate a planet was recently shattered. Or we might notice unexplained dips in starlight, beyond what regular exoplanets cause, from massive engineering projects. Scientists have indeed looked for signs of alien engineering, like Dyson spheres or stellar harvesting, and so far have come up empty, or at least found nothing conclusive. If a Berserker army were active, perhaps we would catch a star system in the act of being stripped. Instead, the stars and planets we observe seem undisturbed in a gross sense. Of course, a counter-argument is that the Berserkers may not need to blow up entire worlds. They can kill life without destroying the planet. But some energy expenditure is inevitable. Imagine a civilization being bombarded. There would be explosions visible in spectra, or heat signatures from large-scale destruction. If dozens or hundreds of civilizations were snuffed out in the last million years, maybe some distant telescope could have noticed something odd, a brief flash, or an anomalous radio burst coincident with a star that then goes radio silent. The absence of any such known anomalies gives skeptics pause. They argue that the Berserker Hypothesis might be unfalsifiable in a way. Any lack of evidence can be excused by "they're stealthy." At some point, that becomes a bit ad hoc. Berserkers versus Berserkers. Another logical wrinkle. If multiple civilizations tried the Berserker strategy, there could be many swarms of probes, possibly with conflicting agendas. What happens when they encounter each other? One suggestion is that they'd fight, potentially destroying each other as well. The hypothesis often assumes a single origin or a cooperative singular purpose. But imagine if two separate species each released their own deadly probes. Would those probes see each other as threats? Perhaps so. There might have been cosmic battles between rival berserker fleets. If that occurred, maybe some probes got wiped out along with their targets. One line of reasoning posits that berserker probes might turn on their own kind, eliminating evidence of themselves just as they eliminate civilizations. For example, after finishing off a planet, a probe might self-destruct or be programmed to shut down to ensure no other civilization can capture and reverse engineer it. But if one batch of probes is shutting down others, that slows the spread. Astrophysicist Duncan Forgan analysed a scenario like this, essentially a civil war among probes, and found that a berserker population couldn't eliminate all its non-berserk brethren fast enough to prevent some from spreading widely. In short, if one probe went rogue and others didn't, the rogue one could not catch every other probe before they propagate. So the idea that all probes conveniently self-destructed or were cleaned up has a problem. What mechanism ensures every last one was cleaned up without fail? There's a risk that even a few survivor probes, perhaps with different programming, would have escaped and continued multiplying in benign ways, which we might have seen. The absence of any alien probes or artifacts so far suggests either a perfect 100% effective purge, which seems almost too efficient to believe, or that none were ever there in the first place. Overkill and inefficiency. One might question the plausibility of a species dedicating the tremendous resources needed to sterilize the galaxy. It's one thing to send out peaceful exploration probes, it's another to weaponize them and essentially wage an endless war against any life. What's the motivation? If it's fear or competition, is a galaxy-wide genocide rational? Or would it make more sense to simply monitor and contain? Some critics say the Berserker scenario imputes a kind of pathological behaviour to an alien intelligence that might not hold up under game-theoretic scrutiny. If most life is rare and distant, actively seeking it out to destroy it might be more effort than it's worth, unless the fear of any rival is so extreme that it justifies infinite war. The Dark Forest hypothesis relatedly presumes that fear is that extreme, that any possible rival is an existential threat, so the only safe strategy is total annihilation of others. But not all thinkers are convinced every intelligent species would adopt that stance. Perhaps cooperation or isolation could be the alternatives. If even one civilization chose a different strategy, like hiding rather than attacking, they could potentially survive quietly, meaning the galaxy might not be completely empty, just silent. Indeed, the Dark Forest hypothesis is often contrasted with Berserker in that way. Dark Forest says many civilizations could exist but remain radio silent, whereas Berserker says no one remains because all got caught. If Dark Forest style hiding is possible, maybe some aliens are out there, cowering, not sending signals, avoiding attention. In that case, the Berserker's net is not totally effective. Life survives in the cracks of the forest, trembling but alive. This would mean the Fermi paradox's silence is due to fear, not actual absence. Some scientists lean towards that interpretation as a less bleak scenario than outright Berserker extermination, and arguably more plausible psychologically. Even humans debate whether sending out active signals is wise, given we don't know who might be listening. Perhaps advanced aliens similarly have decided to keep quiet and hidden, which is why space seems empty. The Great Filter might lie elsewhere. The Berserker Hypothesis places the Great Filter, the hypothetical step that almost no civilization survives, at the stage of developing interstellar signals or travel, only to be swiftly destroyed. But many scientists argue that filters earlier in the chain, like the origin of life, development of intelligence, etc., are more likely culprits for our loneliness. There is considerable evidence that life requires a very specific set of circumstances, and complex life even more so. If that's the case, maybe there simply haven't been many other civilizations to kill off in the first place. The rare Earth hypothesis, for example, suggests Earth might be a near miraculous anomaly. If so, Berserkers are unnecessary to explain the silence. There was no one else anyway. Proponents of Berserkers might counter that rare Earth is too geocentric, and that given billions of planets, it's hard to believe none others developed life. But it's worth noting, until we actually find evidence of a second genesis, or an extraterrestrial biosphere, simple explanations like life is just scarce cannot be ruled out. Internal inconsistencies. Let's entertain the idea that one civilization launched Berserkers. If they were truly thorough, wouldn't they eventually turn on each other, or even on their makers? How did the creators ensure they themselves didn't fall victim? Perhaps they give the machines IFF, identity friend-foe recognition, but across galactic distances and eons, that could fail. Or maybe the creators died off before it mattered. Also, if it only needed to happen once to set the equilibrium, as Bryn said, why only once? Could there have been multiple independent origins? If only once, the uniqueness of that event is itself interesting. Was there exactly one highly paranoid species in the history of the galaxy? If so, are they still around? Possibly not. Their machines might have outlasted them. Some have speculated about a kind of Judgment Day scenario. Maybe the creators, upon realizing what they unleashed, tried to shut it down and failed, becoming victims of their own berserkers. That leaves a loose pack of machines with no master except their prime directive, which is a scary thought, but also one that might imply eventual decay in purpose or coordination. In science, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The Berserker Hypothesis is certainly extraordinary in implication. At present, we have zero direct evidence of any alien life, benign or malign, let alone killer robots prowling the stars. All we have is the Great Silence, which many argue can be explained without invoking cosmic slaughter. Some researchers consider the Berserker idea a fascinating thought experiment or a cautionary tale, but not likely a reality. They point out that it's almost an ultimate conspiracy theory on a cosmic scale. We see no aliens because an undetectable agent eliminated them all. While it's not impossible, it's a claim that is hard to test, until we either find evidence of past civilizations that abruptly ended, or we detect something like an autonomous spacecraft doing something violent. The Berserker Hypothesis remains speculative. However, it cannot be fully dismissed either. It's logically consistent with the observation of silence. As Bryn said, it is entirely compatible with all the facts and logic of the Fermi paradox. except that it leaves us in a universe where there exists no intelligent life left to be discovered. That worst case conclusion is like a punch in the gut. A universe in which we are truly alone, not by chance, but by the chilling efficiency of an exterminator. For the sake of caution, and perhaps survival, it's a scenario some believe we should keep in the back of our minds, however remote it may be. After all, if by some chance it is true, the implications for us are profound and urgent. If the Berserker Hypothesis turned out to be true, the implications would be nothing short of apocalyptic for our outlook on life and the future. It would mean that we live in a galaxy where the default fate of intelligent life is to be hunted down and destroyed. Every star's silence would no longer be just a mystery, but a warning. A stark, "Do not enter" sign hung in the cosmic void, left by the victims as their final legacy. Let's reflect on what living under such a regime would entail. Humanity's prospects. The most immediate consequence is that our own civilization would be in grave peril. We have spent the last century inadvertently broadcasting our presence via radio, TV, radar, and now intentional interstellar messages. These signals have been leaking out as a growing sphere, 100 light years in radius around Earth. If a Berserker probe is in that radius or passes through it, it would detect the signature of our technology, those modulated electromagnetic waves that nature doesn't produce on its own. According to the hypothesis, that's exactly what triggers a kill response. Thus, one chilling implication is that our doom may already be en route. Perhaps decades or centuries ago, a silent sentinel drifting through space caught the telltale whisper of 1940s radio broadcasts or early TV, and flipped into attack mode. In that case, somewhere out there in the dark, an automated destroyer could be decelerating towards our solar system, slowly, methodically, with the patience of a machine, knowing that even if it takes hundreds of years to arrive, its targets will still be here. This sounds like pure horror fiction, but it's exactly what the darkest interpretation of the Berserker scenario suggests. As the IFL science commentary on the hypothesis put it, if it is correct, our own destruction is imminent. The thought sends shivers down the spine. The idea that even now, under the tranquil twinkle of the night sky, something irreversible may have been set in motion a long time ago, and we are oblivious under its shadow. Guidance for behaviour. If we took the Berserker threat seriously, it would force a drastic change in our approach to the cosmos. SETI have traditionally focused on listening for signals. A related field, METI, advocates actively sending out messages to nearby stars in hopes of contacting aliens. But under a Berserker threat, transmitting is the last thing we'd want to do. It would be akin to an animal poking its head out in a silent forest full of hunters. Indeed, several scientists have already cautioned against METI for similar reasons. Even without believing in Berserkers, people like the late Stephen Hawking warned that advertising our presence could attract unfriendly attention. He analogized an alien encounter to Columbus meeting Native Americans, not a happy outcome for the latter. In a Berserker-infested galaxy, the only wise strategy for any civilization would be extreme radio silence and stealth. We would need to cease broadcasting, perhaps even attempt to cloak our planet's techno-signatures. We might even consider hiding physically, for example moving habitats underground or minimizing night-side illumination of our cities that could be seen from space. It would be a paranoid way to live, but maybe the only path to survival, to become one of those hidden civilizations that the Dark Forest scenario envisions, alive but invisible, cowering under the cosmic foliage, listening fearfully for any sign of approach. Psychological impact. Humanity has long imagined that if we find aliens, they might enlighten or uplift us. or at least that we'd have the joy of knowing we're not alone. If Berserkers rule the galaxy, that dream dies. The universe in that case is not just empty, it's actively hostile. It turns the old adage, the universe is not trying to kill you, it just doesn't care, on its head. Instead, the universe, or something in it, is trying to kill you, or will if given the chance. The emotional weight of such a realization would be enormous. It would cast a pall over every star in the sky, each one a potential lurking place of death. We could no longer comfort ourselves with the idea that advanced intelligence equals wisdom or benevolence. On the contrary, the most advanced thing out there might be a remorseless exterminator. The night would feel colder, the void truly horrific. Philosophically, we'd confront a kind of cosmic pessimism. Maybe intelligence always leads to self-destruction. If not by one's own hand, then by the hand of another intelligence's creation. It suggests a universe where Darwinian competition reaches its cruel zenith at the interstellar scale. Only the first killer survives, and all others perish. Strategic choices. If we confirm or strongly suspect Berserkers, humanity would face a grim strategic dilemma. Do we stay quiet and try to hide indefinitely, giving up dreams of joining a galactic community or exploring freely? That might prolong our survival, but at the cost of stagnation and perpetual fear. Or do we do the opposite, boldly expand and prepare to fight? Perhaps if we reach a certain level of technology, we could attempt to locate Berserkers and neutralize them. Maybe we could even play the same game, sending out our own defensive probes to preempt an attack. But this slides into dangerous territory. It's easy to justify building superweapons if you think predators are out there, but in doing so, we might become a kind of Berserker ourselves. And if we misidentify a peaceful signal as hostile and strike first, we could end up being the monsters. This is a scenario author Fred Saberhagen himself contemplated in the later Berserker stories. What if in fighting the Berserkers, we become like them? It's the classic gaze into the abyss problem. We could attempt to contact other hidden civilizations if any exist, to form a silent alliance or share intel. But how to do that without exposing oneself? It may be impossible without risking detection. The Dark Forest scenario implies any trust or communication is near impossible because the risk of revealing oneself is too high, so each world remains isolated. It's a prisoner's dilemma on a galactic scale. Cooperation could save everyone, but the fear of betrayal or just being seen keeps everyone mute. Existential reflection. If Berserkers have truly cleared the field, it leaves us as possibly the last remaining civilization, or among a scant few. That realization could imbue humanity with a sense of profound tragedy, but also importance. We might feel like we're living in a haunted house that spans the Milky Way, with ghosts of billions of lost civilizations around us. There's an eeriness to that vision. Ancient ruins on distant planets, never to be seen because the destroyers erased them too, or they crumbled with time. It also means if we perish, there might be no one else to appreciate the universe, or carry on the legacy of consciousness. Some people like physicist John Wheeler have mused that observers, like intelligent life, give the universe meaning by observing it, their participatory anthropic principle. In the Berserker universe, meaning flickers into being briefly unscattered worlds, only to be snuffed out. One can spin almost a religious angle. Is this the work of some cosmic demiurge of destruction? Or is it simply the logical end, result of amoral Darwinian evolution taken to the stars? Religions or philosophies might adapt, perhaps seeing the Berserker as a form of cosmic evil that we must resist, or conversely as an agent of natural order culling the weak. In Saberhagen's novels, Humans and other species unite in a kind of crusade for life against the Berserkers. It's very much painted as good versus evil. In reality though, the Berserker has no malice, it's just following instructions, indifferent, like a cosmic automaton of fate. In that sense it's even more terrifying. There is no bargaining, no mercy, no purpose we could appeal to, only a function, to kill. It's almost like a personification of death on a galactic scale, a grim reaper with rocket engines. Hope, if any. Is there any silver lining if we found out the Berserkers are real? Perhaps it would unite humanity as never before. All petty earthly conflicts would shrink in the face of an external menace. We would truly have a common cause, survival. The rivalries of nations might dissolve as we collectively hide or strategize against a cosmic hunter. In many sci-fi stories, a terrible external threat is what finally brings peace and unity to humanity. Of course, the peace of hiding under a rock is not a glorious fate, but unity at least might be a byproduct. Another faint hope. Maybe the Berserker network has gaps. Maybe some regions of the galaxy are shielded, for example under dense nebulae or behind a galactic core's radio noise, where life could flourish undetected. If so, we might try to move or take refuge there. One could imagine an interstellar ark carrying the seeds of Earth's life, quietly sneaking to a safer haven. Ultimately, the meaning of life in a Berserker-dominated galaxy becomes a paradox. The only way to stay alive is to hide that you're alive. It's a life under constant threat, an existence akin to surviving in an active war zone where any broadcast is like turning on a flashlight at night, inviting a sniper's bullet. We would need to fundamentally alter our relationship with knowledge and exploration. Maybe we'd focus inwards, virtual worlds, internal advancements, rather than risk outward expansion that gives us away. It's a bit reminiscent of the Astrobiology hypothesis, proposed by some scholars, that advanced beings might hibernate or lie low until conditions are safer or more favourable. Perhaps we'd aestivate, waiting out the Berserkers, hoping they eventually wear down or disappear, but that could be millions of years. If true, the Berserker hypothesis also reframes our understanding of the Fermi paradox in a very poignant way. Enrico Fermi asked, where is everybody? In a Berserker universe the answer is, in their graves. The silence is not puzzling, it's ominous. It's the quiet after the massacre. It will tell us that the cosmos is a much more dangerous place than we ever imagined. While we have been marvelling at stars and dreaming of contact, an assassin may have been lurking unseen. There's also a time perspective. If Berserkers have been active, possibly they might eventually finish their mission, destroy all detectable life. And then what? Do they shut down, having nothing else to do? Or do they patrol indefinitely? It's conceivable that after eons they might themselves succumb to entropy, maintenance failures, cosmic rays, collisions, and wink out of existence. If that happened, there could be an interval when the coast is clear again, for life to re-emerge and flourish. Perhaps humanity is fortunate to arise in a post-Berserker lull. Maybe the Great Massacre happened 100 million years ago, and now enough time has passed that the killers are mostly gone. That's extraordinarily speculative, but it would be an interesting twist. We might be inheriting a galaxy cleansed of competitors, and also of the cleanser itself. However, given no evidence for that either, it's just a fanciful thought. In any case, a confirmed Berserker scenario would urge one action above all: silence. As one character in Liu Cixin's The Dark Forest grimly says, the essence of civilization is survival. If survival means being quiet, we'd have to muffle our planetary presence as much as possible. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might become the survival from exterminating intelligence protocol, a guidebook on how to avoid drawing attention. Ironically, we might long for connection with others, but we'd be forced into self-imposed solitude, To avoid a worse fate, the cosmic loneliness would be intensified by fear. The cosmos stretches around us, profoundly silent and indifferent, or perhaps not indifferent at all, but held under the thrall of ancient violence. Imagine for a moment drifting alone through the starry gulfs. Your ship's radio is off, for you dare not make a sound. The only light is the distant glow of the galaxies, and the eerie phosphorescence of nebulae. You pass world after world, all of them quiet, like cities long abandoned. On some you see the ruins, maybe just the subtle remnants discernible only by careful study, the straight-line scars of what could have been roads, the glint of a metallic object half buried in dust, the faint unnatural symmetry of a collapsed building. But there is no movement, no voices, only wind and echoes. It's as if you wander a great graveyard of civilizations, each headstone a planet orbiting a mute star. This is the universe the Berserker Hypothesis paints, a place where the light of intelligence ignited many times, only to be deliberately smothered, leaving a vast cemetery in the night. One can almost hear the phantom murmur of those lost peoples in the background static of the Milky Way. Are they warning us? Or is that just our imagination, imposing meaning on random noise? We will likely never know their names, their art, their dreams. They are gone, utterly, as if they never existed, all because at some unfathomable distance in both space and time, a frightened or vengeful mind decided that no voice but its own should echo among the stars. In this darkness we find ourselves peering out, a small naive species only recently loud enough to be noticed. We have shouted our presence with radio and television, unaware of what ears might be listening, and now as we come to realize the potential folly, we must contend with the possibility that the signal cannot be unsent. Like a flare launched over a lightless plane, our radiance may draw eyes we do not wish to meet. There is a haunting analogy by science fiction writer Greg Bear. He compared humanity to a child abandoned in a forest, whose cries attract wolves. The image is arresting, a lone child wailing in the night, unseen wolves circling closer with each cry. In our case, Earth's electromagnetic radiance are those cries, and if the berserker wolves are out there, they may already be closing in. One day, perhaps in the far future, or perhaps sooner than we think, the sky could blossom with the fire of their arrival, missiles raining down, or a great ship eclipsing the sun, bringing not greetings or curiosity, but annihilation. The thought is almost too large to hold in the mind. It casts our current struggles and triumphs in a cruel light. All we strive for, all we cherish, could be extinguished in an instant by an uncaring mechanism fulfilling an ancient directive. And what of the Berserker itself? In the grandest sense, it's both villain and tragic instrument. It does not hate us, it does not know us. It's entirely possible that as it snuffs out a civilization, it logs the event with as much emotion as a flame consuming moths. Just a chemical reaction, inevitable and passionless. Perhaps somewhere in its alien circuitry there is a record, star XYZ, civilization level 1.2, neutralized, and then it moves on. One is reminded of an old poem by Yeats. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. In our context, that cradle is the cradle of life, and the nightmare is what comes to destroy it. If indeed it need only happen once for the galaxy to be cleansed of life, then we live in the long aftermath of that singular horror. It's akin to being survivors in the wake of a cosmic genocide, though we arrived after the fact, oblivious. How delicate our position is. We are like someone who has lived happily on an isolated hill, not realizing that just beyond sight lies a field of unmarked graves. How we react to this knowledge, with terror, with resolve, with despair, will define our species going forward. Perhaps the ultimate question the Berserker Hypothesis poses is the stark one: are we next? If the answer is yes, then every day of continued silence might be counted as a borrowed day, ticking down to that final moment when the skies light up and everything ends. But if by chance we are not next, if by fortune or cunning we avoid detection, then the next question is, do we dare break the silence? Do we venture out knowing the fate of others, or do we seal ourselves in quietude? It is a painful choice. To reach for the stars has been humanity's aspiration for ages, yet reaching for the stars under the Berserker's shadow is like reaching for the muzzle of a gun. In the end, we are left with uncertainty. The Berserker Hypothesis may ultimately just be a myth, a modern cosmic horror story we tell in the absence of real data, a way to personify our fear of the unknown. Maybe the galaxy is silent for far more innocuous reasons. Maybe we are alone and always have been, or maybe not. We cannot be sure. So we hover in a liminal state, simultaneously enchanted by the stars and wary of them. We continue listening, hoping to hear a friendly voice, yet part of us now also listens for the silent approach of a predator's footfall. As you float this thought in your mind, alone in the cosmic dark, you might feel a profound eerie solitude. It is the feeling of standing in an empty cathedral at night, knowing that once it was full of congregation. The stars above are like distant candles whose flames have been blown out one by one, and here we stand, the last candle flickering. Perhaps it is only a matter of time before a draft of wind snuffs us out too, but until then, we remain a tiny beacon of life in a seamlessly lifeless expanse. The final thought is both a caution and a beacon of its own. If something is killing civilizations in the galaxy, then the Great Silence is not a mystery, but a monument to fragility and folly, a tomb of those who came before. Whether or not the Berserker is real, the idea of it reminds us that the cosmos may hold dangers far beyond our imagination. It urges humility and vigilance as we step out into that void. We may ultimately choose to venture forth despite the risks, carrying the hope that perhaps the dark predator is a phantom of our fears, or we may choose to lie low, nurturing our light quietly. Either way, whenever you look up at that night sky, the Milky Way arching overhead in majestic silence, consider for a moment the possibility that is a silence of absence, an absence earned in fire and blood long ago. It's a chilling, sobering possibility, yet strangely poetic in its own right. In that silence, we might find not just fear, but a kind of reverence, a duty to remember the fallen, even if we never knew them, and a duty to ensure that if we can help it, the spark of consciousness is not snuffed out again. So we end as we began, in silence. The camera of our mind's eye pulls back, revealing our blue planet suspended in darkness, a lonely glow in an ocean of night. No voices answer our calls. Perhaps out there in the black, an ancient sentinel drifts, listening, perhaps not. For now only the wind in the trees and the soft hum of our technology accompany us. The stars stare down cold and beautiful, keeping their secrets. In this reflective hush, we are left to wonder and to hope that the long quiet of the galaxy is not the lull before the final storm, but merely the calm of nature. Yet the question remains, whispered with every nightfall, is something out there silencing the stars? The truth, as the saying goes, may well be out there, but it may also be far more terrifying than we ever dared to imagine. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on this hypothesis in the comments. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. I'm the Omega Signal, signing off.